The talk is on electric cars or internal combustion engine vehicles. This conversation is ongoing today and has been ongoing for about a century now. It was clear that electric cars were safe and good for the environment, but the question was it possible for electric cars to go commercial while controlling cost? This was the reason why commercial production of electric cars has been a dead conversation for a very long time, but not anymore. The likes of Tesla, Nissan, BMW, and others have changed the narrative, and the race for the top spot in the industry has begun. Many countries around the world are desperately working towards the electric vehicle revolution. It is the future of the automobile industry, with petrol and gas prices rising beyond normality. But with all this going on, Africa's vehicle production scale is nothing to write home about. In fact, it has the least vehicle manufacturing companies in the world, with most of them tracing their roots from Europe, America, or Asia. But looking at the growing electric vehicle industry, it seems the continent has an edge to grab a very valuable opportunity. In this video, we will be looking at the African electric vehicle industry, taking a closer look at the continent's readiness to take charge as the market evolves. Welcome to African Dream Motivation. Stay tuned and let's get into it. An electric car is an automobile that is propelled by one or more electric motors using only energy stored in batteries. The history of electric cars goes back to the period between 1832 and 1839. A Scottish inventor by the name Robert Anderson created a carriage which was powered by a non-rechargeable primary battery cells. This was the beginning of a very long future which propelled the idea into existence. About 4 decades after Anderson's innovation, a French engineer and inventor called Gustave Trouvé followed it up by presenting an electric car at an exposition in Paris. Even in 1897, electric cars found commercial use. They were even used as taxis in Britain and America. Many instances in history were recorded before Henry Ford invented his famous Ford Model T, which made the internal combustion engine cars very popular, sidelining the electric car evolution for a very long time. In the 20th century, internal combustion engine cars made huge advances, which led to the mass production of cheap gasoline and diesel-powered vehicles. As the 20th century was well dominated by gasoline and diesel-powered vehicles, the experiment of making electric cars affordable and highly efficient was still ongoing. The environmental and health impact of gasoline and diesel cars was obviously leaving a dark reputation everywhere they were. Even though its innovation was outstanding, many organizations began finding a way to come out with green technologies to solve the environmental pollution problem caused by high-emission vehicles. In the 1990s, the Californian Air Resources Board, CARB, began pushing for a more fuel-efficient and low-emission vehicle production. Their ultimate goal was to pursue a move to zero-emission vehicles. This direction pointed out electric cars as the best option. The race for more efficient and cost-effective electric cars was on, and many automobile companies began their journey to create electric cars for commercial use. This led to the creation of many models which failed to make an impression in the automobile industry and were either withdrawn or never sold. In 2004, the California electric automaker Tesla Motors began its journey to create its first electric car. Their first project was named Tesla Roadster, which began in 2004 and gradually made marginal success as the years went by. In 2008, the Roadster became the first highway all-electric car to use lithium-ion battery cells, and the first produced all-electric car to travel more than 320 kilometers per charge. This was a great milestone in the electric car space, turning an impossible situation into a possible one. This opened the door for automobile companies like Nissan, BMW, Jaguar, Renault, and many others around the globe to step in and bring out remarkable electric vehicles. Unlike the advanced automobile industries in Europe and America, the African industry saw a rather slow-paced movement from the late 1800s to date. There were many factors to this effect, including the 20th century struggle for independence, making the production of cars a least priority. This was the fate of many countries in Africa, but a few of them, including South Africa, embraced advanced automobile technologies even in the 19th century. South Africa attracted great minds in the industry like Henry Ford, who even visited Port Elizabeth and started an assembly plant there in 1923. South Africa is considered the traditional leader of the African automotive industry. But outside South Africa, especially looking at West Africa, the story was totally different. Many African countries had no vehicle production lines available until the 21st century. Even in the 21st century, a greater number of vehicles used in Africa are imported from America, Europe, and Asia. These imports have been blamed for causing a lot of environmental hazards due to how weak and old these vehicles mostly are. With this notwithstanding, the growth of the electric vehicle industry had been met with a whole different enthusiasm. As Elon Musk and Tesla began their journey to reinvent electric vehicles in 2004, a remarkable development was also taking place in South Africa with a company called Optimal Energy, which was led by Cobus Marin, the CEO and co-founder of the company. It was so outstanding to see Africa stand the test of world innovation. This marked the beginning of electric vehicles in Africa, and very soon, many other automobile companies rose up in Africa and began looking at the opportunity. Some governments pursued public-private partnerships to support the initiative, while other private companies worked so hard on bringing out their prototypes and seeking funding. In every new industry, there are most of the time high risk, and the electric vehicle industry was no different. Today, you can't talk about the evolution of modern-day electric vehicles without mentioning the outstanding works the Tesla company has achieved. But it will surprise you how long it had to take for them to make a profit. Since its establishment in 2004, the company had to wait for 18 years before tasting a profitable year. So if the company couldn't raise enough money to sustain its operations, its outstanding success story would have been a sad one. There is indeed a roadmap of how these countries and companies were able to establish a great industry. To understand what it takes to establish a strong industry for African electric vehicle evolution, we need to first know what it took for successful countries and continents to kickstart their industries. This brings us to our next chapter. Industry identity and branding. Whenever a new industry pops up, it becomes very necessary for intensive publicity and branding towards creating awareness and emphasizing the competitive edge and advantage of the disruptive technology. This is not something that is done in a short time. In fact, for an industry to be successful, it will take years or even decades to really capture the awareness of the potential customers. The world is talking about the success of the electric car industry in America and Europe. But what many people are forgetting is that this is an industry that was very vibrant in the 19th century. In fact, it was so successful that many taxis were electric cars then. The industry collapsed when internal combustion engines became a viable option for commercial production of cars. The giants in the industry like Henry Ford was able to make production of gasoline and diesel cars very cheap as compared to the electric cars available. But even after that, electric cars were still in production but were not commercialized. Therefore, the rich history of electric vehicles is very significant to condition the minds of the ordinary American or British to accept it as a really possible endeavor. With the electric car space already existing, brand positioning became very necessary for companies to embark on. Tesla, the leading and current best-selling electric car company in the world, understood this 18 years ago when they were just starting out. They were very particular about using the name Tesla. Because of this, they spent $75,000 to buy out the name Tesla, which was already registered by another person. This was simply because Tesla was a household name and recognized as a genius in the electric revolution in the early 1900s. Nikola Tesla was a futurist, inventor, electrical engineer, and a mechanical engineer who was known for his contribution to the design of modern alternative current electricity supply system in the early 1900s. All these were to create a great image of the company in the minds of potential customers. Therefore, it is not by chance that a company is leading the electric car evolution. An industry needs an identity to command its market value. Funding. Before electric car companies like Tesla, General Motors, Volkswagen Group, Lucid Motors, Faraday Future, and the rest could make any significant move towards producing their very first prototype, they needed to secure huge funding. Tesla was founded by Martin Eberhard and Mark Tarpenning in July 2003. As the company began operations and realized how capital-intensive its operation would be, it needed funding, and this brought in ELON MUSK, who invested $6.5 million into the company and became the largest shareholder. This investment was very crucial in pushing the company to where it is today. So many companies have folded up, especially those that attempted to make commercial electric vehicles. From the length and breadth of Africa live thousands of great minds in the automobile industry who have greater potential to establish a long-lasting car manufacturing firm, but it all boils down to the capital needed. And note that this is a capital-intensive industry where industry players are not free from risk, so it becomes more difficult trying to work around a low budget. Coming up with a prototype is one thing, but going into mass production is a whole different thing altogether. Tesla was successful because even during production, Elon Musk was still making moves for great investors to come in. Because other than that, all these great ideas will just sit in the head and never materialize. He continued leading the venture capital funding as Tesla's first electric car prototype was under development, which was called the Roadster. This funding brought investment from prominent entrepreneurs, including co-founders of Google, Sergey Brin and Larry Page, and former eBay president Jeff Skoll. By May 2007, they have raised their total private financing investment to over $105 million. With all this coming in, Tesla was able to commence the production of their first commercial electric car, the Roadster, in 2008, after the prototype had already been displayed in 2006. Elon Musk personally invested $70 million into the company, so obviously there was funding enough to kickstart the project. If electric vehicles will be produced in Africa, huge funding will be required to put success in a possible perspective. This was the problem that sadly ended the campaign for the Optimal Energy Joule, the very first electric vehicle made in Africa. Production. For any automobile company to be successful in any region, a highly advanced production plant is required. These production plants are where the actual manufacturing is done. It is also very costly but very necessary. Most African countries only have assembly plants, which are mostly for top-flight automobile companies like BMW, Ford, and others. Therefore, for a viable African industry, companies need to begin thinking about establishing manufacturing plants, which will definitely demand capital. A country like South Africa is on top of the car manufacturing business in the region, with numerous manufacturing plants established already. This makes the conversation about electric vehicle a bit easier to tackle there. When Tesla began its expansionary measures, it started by acquiring production plants and factories. Their very first was owned by General Motors in 1962 and was jointly operated with Toyota in 1984. These establishments gave the company a push to be able to independently and efficiently work on their projects. Also, one aspect of electric vehicle that makes it super expensive is their batteries. To have full control of these, many successful vehicle manufacturing companies either outright own or jointly own their battery production lines to control the cost. Looking at what goes into the production, the final product becomes very costly, especially at the beginning. For instance, when the Tesla company finished producing the Roadster, the electric vehicle costed $109,000. This was even after federal tax credit of $7,500 had been granted. The Roadster was powered by lithium-ion cells, which are often used in laptop computer batteries and could recharge from a standard electric outlet. Mind you, this vehicle had an efficiency rating equivalent to a gasoline mileage of 135 miles per gallon. This was obvious that most customers would ignore it for its high price, but Tesla kept improving on their batteries, which has previously constituted the high price of the Roadster. In 2012, a new battery development was reached, which came with their new release called Model S. The Model S came with 3 different battery options, which gave estimated range of 235 or 300 miles per charge. The production continued, with each model improving upon its battery and the entire cost of the vehicle. By 2017, a few other key players in the automobile industry have made outstanding advances in the quest to produce an affordable and inexpensive electric vehicle. Nissan and Tesla were able to produce their vehicles to be under $50,000 and still look very flashy. This great price superiority was reached after they went into mass production in the hundreds of thousands. For a company starting out to enjoy such price advantage due to economies of scale, huge capital will be required to get it done. Supercharging stations. Aside from its production, Tesla took it an extra mile to build supercharging stations across the United States and Europe for charging batteries quickly at no extra cost. As the industry grew, these supercharging stations have expanded into many areas, making them easily accessible, and what makes it mind-blowing is that it's for free. Therefore, considering the low cost of buying an electric car and charging the battery, you will realize that it is even cheaper to own an electric car than the traditional diesel or gasoline car. This is one of the convincing factors people are considering to make an informed decision to buy an electric car. The government, together with stakeholders, have worked so hard to improve the charging unit to the extent that there are so many others in neighborhoods, restaurants, hotels, and places of public accessibility. Some are so affordable that owners of electric cars are able to make the purchase and keep at home. Government interventions. Last but not the least, one significant part of the success of this new evolution is the support of the governments. For instance, the government of the United States of America offered a federal tax credit for any purchase of an electric vehicle. This has gone a long way to help reduce the cost. It is all about the government's policy leading the consumer market to the electric vehicle space. As of 2022, one country which was leading the electric vehicle evolution was Norway. The government has built a massive charging infrastructure and subsidized free parking for electric vehicle owners in many parts of the country. These efforts are part of the reasons why 54% of new cars sold in 2020 in Norway were electric vehicles. Also in China, the government has offered massive subsidies and investments in charging infrastructure across the country. This has therefore led to a highly competitive industry with over 400 automakers producing electric vehicles for the global market. This shows that for any country or continent to see massive growth in the electric vehicle industry, governments and regional leaders need to factor that into their policy making and budget. This will go a long way to spark the interest of consumers. With this in the right perspective, we can now go on to answer the question, is Africa ready for electric cars? The general African automobile industry is flooded with overdependence on importation of used cars from developed countries, which in most cases contributes significantly to environmental and air pollution. As much as 40% of the world's used vehicles are pushed to Africa, which is a problem for the continent. Therefore, the electric vehicle evolution could be a direction African countries can turn to for more competitive and fair automobile production. With commercial production and sales of electric vehicles taking off around the globe, Africa has a great opportunity of unlocking an outstanding potential in this new market now than ever. One most important thing about the production of electric vehicles in recent times is the declining cost of lithium-ion batteries, which companies like Tesla and Nissan are capitalizing on to produce best-selling electric vehicles. South Africa is considered the leading and largest electric vehicle market in Africa, yet only 1,000 out of 12 million vehicles are electric. This means there is a very huge market capitalization and so much room for Africa to take advantage of. This is a capital-intensive project, and African governments need to partake in it and emulate what some successful countries like the United States, China, and Norway are doing. Even though some African countries like South Africa, Mauritius, Seychelles, Rwanda, and North African countries are working around the clock to make an impact in the new electric vehicle industry, many other countries in Africa need to adopt the same strategy. This is the future. Whether you like it or not, a new era has arrived. Companies are going to continue to be bigger, and very soon, they will take over the world. But the question is, which side of the story will you belong to? The people who took advantage and worked hard toward the future, or the people who ignored it and were unable to compete again? As we have seen earlier in this video, even bigger companies in the United States had to struggle financially before they could break through. It is time Africa begin investing in local electric vehicle assembling and manufacturing plants. If all the burden is left on private African establishments, they might not even be able to go beyond producing their prototypes. This has happened over and over again with new technologies. The very first electric vehicle began its product design in 2004. The same year the Tesla company began. Unfortunately, they couldn't secure enough funding to enter commercial production. Optimal Energy in South Africa had to close down after gaining so much popularity with their electric car prototype, the Joe. For the African industry to be successful, governments and businesses need to attract many investors. Also, government can help by creating an atmosphere such as tax reliefs and incentives to encourage people to opt for electric vehicles. Africa's readiness is dependent on the leaders deciding to prioritize the electric car opportunity and prepare towards it. According to the United Nations Environmental Programme, UNEP, countries like South Africa, Mauritius, Seychelles, Rwanda, and other North African countries are the early leaders in the electric vehicle market. A country like Kenya in East Africa is working hard on reviewing its tax structure to adopt electric vehicle policies and standards to favor the industry. As of 2021, there were close to 50 startup companies in the electric vehicle space in Kenya, which is a great start for the country. Again in Kenya, A target of 5% have been set for all newly registered vehicles to be electric by 2025. Huge investments have also gone into the establishment of local manufacturing plants. Also, about 15 ECOWAS countries have adopted originally harmonized fuel economy roadmap, which include drastic measures to create awareness and promote electric vehicle production in West Africa. In 2019, Mauritius initiated a reduction in excise duty on electric cars. This has resulted in a significant increase in hybrid and electric vehicles as the years went by. Again, in East Africa, many countries such as Rwanda are leading the promotion of e-mobility through policy innovations and reduction tariffs for electric vehicles, as well as zero value added tax to be enjoyed on electric vehicle consumables. Also, exemptions from import and excise duties and rent-free lands for charging stations have been applied. North African countries such as Morocco and Egypt are also stepping up their game. Even though Africa has a long journey to go, these steps taken by national and regional leaders are very significant in putting electric vehicles in the right perspective to prepare Africa to dominate production on the continent. Many African countries are joining the journey and the future looks promising. To conclude, this is a new industry opening up, and that is also a great opportunity for the African continent to capitalize on that and establish herself stronger. Many governments are struggling to hold a grip on the rising prices of diesel and gas, affecting the prices of even domestically produced goods. Also, the overdependence on weak and old cars from around the world has serious environmental and health issues on the continent. Therefore, it is in the right direction for electric cars to be embraced and supported. The global electric vehicle industry is estimated to be about $1 trillion, even though it is very young. This is a symbol of greater market capitalization in the future. Even though many countries are doing everything possible to seek funding for this project, I believe more effort needs to be done, and all African countries must see it as an opportunity and not misplace such a priority. Car production in general is a capital-intensive business, and to succeed, a company may see years of unprofitability where employees will still demand their salaries. Expenses and bills will need to be paid. Even though some African countries are supporting the electric vehicle agenda, funding is, however, the biggest barrier and is needed in a very high volume. This was the reason why the Optimal Energy Job, which was deemed the epitome of electric vehicle evolution in Africa, sadly discontinued. It was sad to see a great future end in a rather miserable way. Click the first link in the description or the card above to watch our video on the rise and fall of the Tesla of Africa. Electric cars are the future, and it has already started. Let's all embrace it and be part of the $1 trillion industry. Thank you for making it to the end of this video. If you like it, kindly give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed yet, kindly do so and click on the notification bell so that you don't miss any new video we upload. Until we meet again in another video, have a wonderful day.